Vicky Hawkesworth, hello, and should I say welcome back to Shock Radio.
Hi. Oh, it's good to be back. It feels like strange, but also not strange at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, obviously you being Salford Uni alumni, BATV and radio production all those years ago.
Yeah. How many years has it now? God, I actually don't want to do the maths. It's made me feel really old. But I think 2017 is when I graduated, so 8 years? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a long
Don't
time.
say it like that. Don't be like, she's eating shit.
To be fair, we're both 20, so it's not like we're young, but
Yes,
that's-
you are. Yes, you are.
But yeah, you've had a lovely career since you leaving the uni. So let's start at the very beginning. What was your first memory with the radio industry? What was your first memory of the radio?
Oh, okay. So my first, I think, memory of radio is I had this little pulled by a teddy bear called Archie, and in the back of the car I'd be like, BBC Radio Archie, and I'd do little bulletins like stuff. But I think really like radio was just a huge thing in our house when I was growing up, in terms of in the kitchen we had Tower FM on, which was a local Bolton station, and in my mum's bedroom she had Q103 as it was at the time, so Hits now, and up in my bedroom we had like Galaxy, which then became Capital Manchester. So basically we just had so much radio going on in the house, and I loved it. I loved the people that were on there and hearing all about what they do and stuff, but I never really thought of it as like a job until I took media studies in, I think I was 14, so it was like for my year 10 options. I'd nearly took triple science, and my science teacher was just like, look, he's not that into science. I don't really know why she's picking this, but if she wants to. So instead, I took media studies, and then I was like, oh, that could be quite a fun job to have. And then me and my best friend were like, we're going to have a radio show together. And we got here at uni, and she did the first year of TV and radio, and she was like, it's not for me. And I was like, right, okay then, it's just me on my own now.
I feel like that's a recurring theme with most of the people that spoken to. They're in their bedrooms, they're like making pretend like radio programs. Is that something you really enjoyed when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do a lot of it at home. Like, I know people always say like they got like their CDs and stuff when like they were practicing or whatever. I did it a bit in the car and stuff, and I imagined it in my head. But I guess I didn't really fully like attempt to do a show until I went to Bolton FM, which was when I was so it was my first year of uni. So I was 18, and then they just sort of threw me into it, and I was like, okay, here we go. Because when I went to college, I picked my college because they said they had a radio station, and then when I got there, they didn't have a radio station. So I did a lot of like media studies, but I didn't actually get to do any radio. So really, it was just like got to Bolton FM, went in there, and they threw a paper at me and told me to read, and then that was it. Like, there was my crash course, 5 years at a community station. So yeah.
Was it fun getting that like first bit of actual radio experience? Obviously, like you said, there's no radio station at your college. Was it nice to get that first little bit of experience?
Yeah, it was good, but it was scary because I'd thought, oh, I'm going in to make cups of tea. This was the first day I went in. I was like, I'll make cups of tea, like whatever. And then he literally threw the paper at me. He said, there's 20,000 people listening. Read that. And I was just like, okay. But it was great because then you're just sort of in then. You don't really have time to overthink it or worry, and you just sort of have fun and play. And obviously the joy of a community station is that is where you go and you learn your craft and you hone your craft, and everyone makes mistakes, and that's kind of the whole point, to like learn how to make the mistakes and then hopefully not make the mistakes again. So once I was sort of settled in there, it was kind of fun. I kind of just enjoyed doing it because you got to do so many different shows. Like, what was scarier was like covering Drive, or like, because we had a guy called Big H who did the Drive show, and he was great, but he did like way more features with way more beds and sound effects and stuff, and that was like, oh, I don't want to get all of that wrong. But you know, you just it's each challenge as you go, and the reality is that like you get into the real world, you have to do all those beds and those clips and stuff anyway, so you've got to learn at some point.
Seems like a lot of pressure, 20,000 people.
Yeah, I don't know how true the stats were, but that's what they said to me, and I was like, who knows? Oh, but do you know what? The thing is, you have to do that thing though, don't you? On air, you have to go like, okay, like there's that many listeners, but I'm just talking to one person,
Yeah,
and then you kind of just imagine that one person. You can imagine that's like your auntie or your friend or your sister or whatever, and you'd be all right.
How was it? So, when did you start at Shock? Did you do it in your second year?
Yeah.
So, how was that like? Because you mentioned you were at Bolton FM in your first year.
Yeah.
How was doing Shock different from doing Bolton FM?
Oh, Oh, interesting question. Yeah, so I did want to do Shock in the first year, but I just didn't make the cut because there were so many people who wanted shows. So I got in on second year and I did 2 years of like a show called Battle Tracks. And it was different to Community actually, because I think in Community as well, it's actually sort of the different groups of people you're with and the difference that the station wants. With Shock, obviously you've got such a freedom to do exactly whatever it is that you want, because that's the whole point. We're here to be learning and making what we want, and you know, it's such a young audience and a young group of people that you're working with. But in community radio, you've got people who actually, quite a lot of the people who work there are older because they're from the community, they care so much about their community. And maybe you've got like sort of a reverend who's doing a show, and you've got people who don't dream of it as their career, but they just love doing it. Like they love doing a Sunday breakfast show or whatever. So there's a different voice to that station. And what I think was good is that I could still kind of do whatever I wanted at Bolton FM, because like it's a community station. That's the point. You get to, everyone comes in with their brief and does what they want. But you learn a lot from like the older people, from like what they'd experienced, what they'd done, or you know, you learn more about like making sure you're talking to that niche audience of people in Bolton. I don't know, I just think that there was stuff to draw from both experiences. Plus there was free biscuits at Bolton, which was really good.
What biscuits are we talking? Are we talking like custard creams, or is it like the...
Yeah, they weren't like premium, but like sometimes you got a good like, because people would just bring in the stuff that like say over Christmas that they didn't want, and you get all the stuff in there, which was great.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that show Battle Axe, because on my laptop I have the one of the first shows that you did.
Stop it! You do not have a clip of that. Well, I did not know they had this.
One more time. With Vicky and Courtney, let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
Hello, you're listening to Battle Axe with me, Vicky, and this week, unfortunately, Courtney can't be here, so I've got a stand-in presenter for
No,
her.
I am here, Vicky.
Oh, sorry, Courtney is
I
here.
am.
No, not really. I'm joking. It is Tom. Hello.
It's Tom Hoy, our guest from last week, who's being Courtney for the evening. I don't know, maybe we should call you Coy.
I'm
maybe
nodding,
call
and
you
no one
Tautney.
at home can see that. So Tautney.
Tautney. I don't
Tautney.
know, that could be you.
That's a good name.
Whatever you want to be. But this week it is 90s week, and we've picked a couple of rivals. I've got Blur. Who have you brought this week?
Oasis.
Oasis. So we're going to go head to head and try and convince our guest that we've brought the best act to the table this week. And our guest, talking of our guest, it is Lauren Johnson. Hello.
I fade that out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's mad.
How's it feel listening back to that?
It's not, thankfully, not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was like, this is going to be a car crash. But it's just funny that I remember thinking that the jingle was like, well good. I was like, I have smashed it. But that record changing, also it goes on forever. There's things I would change now with a bit more experience. But it's fun, it's nice. I think it's hilarious that I'm almost surprised that the show has started. I'm like, oh, hello. Like, I wasn't prepared to do a radio show. It's fun. Actually, it would be quite nice to listen back to a whole show, maybe, and see how we did. But I was never going to win with Blur, was I? No offence, Blur, but that...
I don't know.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. I think that was me being kind to my guest, because he was doing me a favour and coming in and being my host, and me going, okay, you can have Oasis.
And you made all... I read that you made all of the imaging for that yourself.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's what I just assumed we all did. Also, we're all working on no budget, aren't we, right? So, and that's the whole point, is really that you want to learn how to, like, get it good at all of this stuff. So, yeah. But, I mean, there wasn't that much imaging. There was a couple of jingles, an intro, and then I just, grabbed some beds from the internet, and that was it.
It tends to be how most people do it nowadays.
Yeah.
Still happens. Most of our beds are from the internet, I'd say.
Yeah.
Royalty free, just typing that in, desperate to find something that isn't horrendous or something that sounds similar to something that would be copyright.
Has that happened in this room? Is that weird to be sitting in this room now thinking about that happening?
The weird thing is that it doesn't feel that weird. Like, it's strange. I did the BBC Stories tour, and you go back to your school and you talk to the students there and you tell them your story. And walking in there, like, I'd thought, oh, I don't really feel that different to how I felt when I went to that school. Then when I walked in the corridors, weirdly, it's going to sound really strange and maybe like slightly big-headed, but it's not meant to be big-headed. I just felt like bigger than when I walked through those corridors. I was like, why do I feel like... But possibly I am taller than I was at that point, but I just felt like a lot had changed and I was really different. And then I thought perhaps I'd get a similar feeling today, and actually it just doesn't really even feel like that much time has passed. But what I will say is it was always so dark and dingy in here. I remember it being like almost a bit like a club darkness, and we had like colourful lights. And it was bright in here today. You guys have
We're getting a lick of paint, I think.
Yeah.
It's really done wonders.
Look at a new logo.
I guess it's a bit strange to be on this side of the desk because I was always on that side. Clearly, as you can tell, quite panicky still in my early days of radio. Oh, hello! And trying to focus on my buttons and also navigate a guest and a co-presenter, which also the co-presenter always wasn't really that into it because the first year I did it with my friend Courtney, who was my friend who I was going to do radio with when we were 14. And then she did it really just because she'd promised me we'd do a radio show together one day. So she didn't really want to be doing radio, and she was great. But like, I was invested, you know, like I wanted to do this, and she was there to like have a good time. So obviously I was like a bit more stressed, and I feel good that now I possibly don't feel quite as.
Because I suppose it's quite a lot of pressure. You've got like so many like faders on this side, faders on that side. You've got so many like things you need to press on here. It's like a lot to take in.
It is. It's multitasking at its absolute finest, radio, because you're like counting that time, doing your buttons, you're trying to talk, you have to keep it sounding natural. Like, people don't realise actually how much goes into it. I think sometimes, you know, when people say to you, they're like, oh, so you just put the mics up and you just talk. And you're like, oh, no, like we talk things through, we plan things out, and they're like, oh, that's ruined the magic for me, like. You're like, well, it's not as easy as, like, sometimes it is. Like, sometimes you put the mic up and you go, all right, we'll talk like this, and you find a lovely groove, but, you know, this is a job. We put work into it.
I mean, we'll go on to the rest of your career more in depth later, but is there anything from student radio you've taken that you now put into your current job at Radio 1?
Oh, okay. Well, there was one time on Shock that I didn't get told off. I'll see how I can tell this story without doing the one thing I was told off for. I was talking about going to see the band Imagine Dragons, and the taxi driver on the way to see the band had made some sort of a joke to how the band name sounded a little bit woo, like, and alluded to like, oh, you know, I don't know how to say it. You know, you get the vibe, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of told that story, but without so much censorship, and thought it'd be fine because like it's my student radio. And the producer came in and was like, do you not talk about that on the radio again? And I was like, I mean, obviously it made sense, but I was just, you know, young and naive, and I was just like having fun. I was like, what a funny story.
In the moment.
So perhaps maybe a bit more caution, I realised. I also learned not to, I mean, obviously knew not to swear, but I panicked one time I was signed here because so I had a guest on, and he was, you know, one of those friends who will just wind you up throughout life, no matter what you're doing. And he could see that I was flustered and the kit wasn't working and something hadn't gone right. And then he was saying something, and I just said a swear word. I didn't mean to. I was just flustered.
I think I can imagine which one it is.
Yeah. And then he thought that was hilarious because he wasn't like a radio student. He was like doing finance and stuff, so that he didn't like care about the rules of radio either. So that and I was just like, this is the worst feeling ever. So I think perhaps maybe it was the beginning of me learning to kind of, you know, be a bit more cool about it and less stressy. And I think it's invaluable what you learn at student radio because it's like one of those places where you practice and stuff. But what I would say is like perhaps it was quite hard with my show because it was so heavily formatted. Like I had that structure and I had to do it as it kind of was. I mean, I had to. I was the boss. I could have changed it. But like this is a place to challenge yourself and to do those things that might be trickier. Your features with like 3 different beds and sound effects and all sorts. And the joy of it is that you can do it, and if it gets messed up, it's absolutely fine because this is your playground. So I would maybe, if I was to go back and do it again, maybe have done a different show in my second year that I might have like challenged myself more on. But perhaps at that time I wasn't ready to challenge myself. I don't know.
I believe after Shock, or possibly during Shock, I don't know which one, but you were at Capital. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, the timeline of it really was that I had been doing some volunteer work at Q103, and the presenter there was like, "Oh, student radio, that's where it's at. That's how you're going to get into radio." And I was like, "Oh dear, like I'm about to finish my third year and I haven't been to any of the events." I came in and I did my show, but I was so shy, I just kept to myself. I didn't talk to other people really. So I didn't go to any of the events, and then I was like, "Oh God, this guy said this is my way in." So I went to this like one last event that they were doing, and it was the Talk in Liverpool with, and they had the Capital Manchester, the Heart North West, and they had the Capital Liverpool people there, and they were just chatting through. And Ben Anderson, who was the head of Capital Liverpool at the time, was like, "We're going to do like a day where students can come in, and like it's like a little workshop day if you want to put your name down for it." So I went and put my name down for it. Then they had like an internship that they were doing for breakfast when they still had breakfast shows. So I applied for that, and then I managed to get that. Like, I had a little interview, did that for a month, and that was my route into Capital. So that was slightly just after uni. But I moved to Liverpool for a month, did that, and then I was like, "Hi, Capital Manchester, like, can I get on your street team? I'm going to come in and do work experience." And I went in and did work experience like a couple of times, and then I just kept asking the boss there, Dan, I was like, "Can I come in?" And he was like, "Just come in whenever you want." Like, I think he just got sick of me asking. He was just like, "Just come whenever you want." So I did. I went in every day that I wasn't working as a receptionist, and then on the day I used to work like mornings as a receptionist, so I'd go in after that. Basically, I was just there all the time for like if they ever needed a spare pair of hands or if they needed help with anything, I was there ready to like basically grave jump for when someone left.
Because I've seen in photos, there's photos of you and obviously Rob, Rachel and Wingman.
Yeah.
How was that like working for them?
Oh, do you know what? It was mad because they were like one of the shows that I'd grown up listening to that made me want to be in radio. And I'd always loved their shows and thought they were just so good together. And so the fact that I was getting to work with them was like so exciting, but also like so daunting because I was like, I don't want to like not be liked by them. Like suddenly, you know, that pressure, you're like, I want to fit in. And they'd been like on air together for so many years. They were such a tight knit group that like they were lovely and welcoming, but like they had their group. Like they weren't needing like this like sort of skinny little 18-year-old, like, well, not 18, I guess 21-year-old who was dead shy, like to come in and sit in their studio and do what? Like just sit in the corner and watch because she was too shy to say anything. Like so it was a bit like, a bit overwhelming, but honestly, it was one of the best things because I got to work with those people who had made me want to work in radio, and then I got to work with them more and more and more, and I started to feel like part of the group, and they gave me a nickname because they gave all the producers nicknames.
What was the nickname?
Well, it was National Vicky because by the point that they'd actually decided on a nickname was when I was starting doing stuff with Radio 1. So they were like National Vicky, but they couldn't tell their listeners why I was called National Vicky. So... you know, nobody knew. And that was only because that was like an on-air nickname because I'd started covering their producer at that point if he was off. He was called Clink Clink, just a little joke from them. And their producer before was called American Sam because he went to America once. And I was like, "Oh, but she goes to America a lot." He's like, "No, I went once." So, you know, it's always fun to be in the gang then. But yeah, it was great. It was good. But they would always be like, "Oh, say this for the radio, do this for the radio." When I first passed my driving test and I was driving to work for the first time, I was like, I don't really know the route, so I think I'm just going to follow the bus. And they were like, "Say it on air," because I didn't actually do it in the end. I drove in, like, found a route, but I was like, I'm going to follow it. And he was like, "Did you pull in at all the bus stops?" Yeah.
I'm just imagining that in my head, just like...
I'm not surprised considering I know what they're like. Because I remember when we walked into their studio, because we were doing, what were we there for? Oh, we were interviewing Adam Weil and Lou Taylor. And because they were next door, they're like, "Oh, go into Capital." And we were like, "Oh my God." We walked in, they're just staring at you. I was like, "Hi." But they're so nice and
They
so
are.
chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole team's really lovely.
They're really lovely. How was, I suppose, the Capital experience different to what you experience at Radio 1 now? I guess you're a producer at Capital. Is there any difference in vibe between Capital and Radio 1?
Yeah, I mean, the presenters I worked with at Capital were sort of, they'd been around for a lot longer in a different time of radio when there was more time to speak and there was more freedom of different ideas and things that you could do on air. And so they very much like maintained their style, which I thought was brilliant, and it's what I loved. And so I feel like I actually got to learn a lot from them, and I learned a lot from Adam Brown as well, who's now on Radio X Early Breakfast. But he did Capital Drive at the time, and I did a lot of working with him before I really got to work with Rob, Rachel, and Nige, Wingman. So I feel like I learned quite a lot from all of those people, because I learned sort of how not to do that sort of presenter voice that you are so tempted to do when you start in radio. And they taught me to be natural and be real and talk to your like audience as if they're your friend in the pub, and not to be like, you're listening to Vicky Hawkesworth, because you know you won't. He's like, Adam said to me, he's like, you're not going to go into the pub and be like, you're sat with Vicky Hawkesworth. You should be like, hi, it's Vicky. And like be so natural with it. And I learned, you know, I think a lot about like the way the three of like Rob, Rach and Wingman had that rapport with each other, and it was such a trusted thing because they'd done it for so many years that they kind of could just pick up. They knew what each of their roles were. In terms of them working at Radio 1, it's a completely different kettle of fish. Like, I think every station is so different to one another. And obviously we're in a different age of radio now. So like, I think what I noticed more was that because Rob, Rach and Wingman had worked together for so long, they were so like at ease. They knew their rhythm, they'd done their thing. And I came into a Radio 1 studio and it was like fast paced. It was like, go, 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 wrap it up tight here, don't do this. This needs to be, and it was just like, there's so much to like think about all at once. Which it was just a different environment because it was a different situation, a different station, and ultimately what audiences are after now like tests different to what back in the day people wanted. So, you know, it was a bit of a crash course coming into Radio 1. There was a lot that I was like, right, we really need to practice this and this and this, but all at once.
Well, let's go on to Radio 1 now, because 2020 you were one of the presenters chosen for the prestigious Christmas takeover. What made you first want to apply for that?
Well, I mean, like, they were opening it up to anyone. That just doesn't happen. Like, it didn't happen. It was, you know, you sat there in Manchester going, how am I going to break into a radio industry that's mainly in London when I don't really want to move to London? And you're thinking, I don't know. And I didn't want to do Radio 1. Not that I was like, well, I don't want to do Radio 1. I just didn't think that was on the cards for me. I didn't think it was a possibility because I thought I'd have to move to London for that. And so I remember saying to my boss at the receptionist, like when I was a receptionist at the clinic, I was like talking about radio, and he's like, oh, you're going to be on Radio 1 one day. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not even going to try. So I'm not. And so when this like happened as an opportunity, there was, you know, a lot of like shrinking within the radio industry, like jobs, I was seeing them go. There was redundancies, there were deregulations and stuff. And so I was thinking, right, so my options are now more limited, and they've opened this up to anyone. So like, why not like throw my name in the hat? And they're never going to say yes anyway. So like, I'm throwing demos at everyone anyway. Might as well. So I did it. And I remember in 2019, I applied first. I was like, this demo's great. And not even tooting my own horn, but I was like, I'm actually really happy with this demo. I think this is really cool. And then I never heard anything, and I was like, oh, okay, never mind, that wasn't great. So in 2020, it obviously been such like a weird year for everyone. Like, I didn't know if anything I was saying was any good anymore, because you're just making like radio under a duvet, and like there's nothing even going on in the world to talk about. But I thought, I'll do it again. I'll go for it. Like, you know, you don't get anything if you don't put your name in the hat. So I put it in again, thinking it wasn't as good, and then I got a WhatsApp, and I was like, it's a scam. Like, it's a really niche scam, but it's a scam. Like, and then I was like, how would they have my number? How would they know I'd applied to Radio 1? Like, okay, let's reply. So that's why I went for it. And then, you know, then it was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to get the chance to do some radio shows at Radio 1, and I'll probably never be back, so let's just have some fun with it. And that was it, really.
Isn't that crazy, though, to think that you just went in there thinking, oh, I'll never be back? Considering where you are now.
Yeah, it is, because I kind of think I had to tell myself I'll never be back, because if I'd have gone in thinking like, oh, there's a show coming from this, I would have freaked out even more than I already was, because like it's amazing. You're like, oh my god, I'm going to be on Radio 1, but also you're like, oh my god, I'm going to be on Radio 1 and I can't mess this up, and And I got an anthem show, so that's quite a nice. It's like a nice show to get because you've got like 30-second pockets between blocks of songs, and it's not as intense as putting loading all the songs in and trying to do features and stuff. But I was like, right, I might tell stories in my 30 seconds. I'm not just doing shout outs. I was like, no, like I know that's the show, but like anyone can do shout outs. I was like, I had to prove myself. So part of me was like, I'm never going to do that, but part of me was like, I'm still going to be like, look at what I can do. So any good story I'd had for my entire life at that point became part of the show. But like a lot faster, which is where I then made my mistakes because I was trying to get through a story like and there were mistakes, but I think the difference with saying I'm not going to come back was that I actually just let myself enjoy it and go, you know what, I'm not going to be horrible to myself for each and every mistake because this may never happen again, and I want to take in that moment.
At the time, you were also at Global as well as being at Radio 1. Was it hard to balance those two things, like doing Radio 1 and working at Global as the producer?
No, because when I was doing the Radio 1 stuff, it was here or there. It was months in between. You were sort of waiting to see if, like, hopefully you would get, a bit more cover. And so I very easily filled my days with, I was doing Capital, Manchester work, and Heart Northwest. That was that same company, but I was also, like, doing stuff with the Manc. Like, I did have to start, like, making little bits of sacrifices of, right, to lose a day here and do a day there or whatever. But I don't know, I feel like you get into this rhythm, especially like, I don't know if you guys feel that rhythm already, but I definitely did within third year of uni. I was doing this work experience and this work experience and this work experience, then I was doing the course, and I was doing like a part-time job, and you basically just fill every I might not have been that many work experiences, I might be two of my own on that, but there was like a couple at least, a few different things that you were like basically like blocking your days out with, because you're just trying to get as much experience as you can, and you're just trying to get a foot in the door, and you're just trying to meet all the right people. So I think at that point I was still on that train of like, well, I need to be doing more. So like at that point I was doing Bolton FM and Gadio and Capital and the Manc, and then doing Radio 1 when they would have me. And so, like, I guess I just didn't see it as an issue because it was just what we were doing. But now I'm like, now I have the show, now I have a bit more free time. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so lazy these days. But I don't think it is that I'm lazy. I think it's just that there was just so much that we did back then.
Yeah, I mean, student radio, and even now, I'm like so busy. We've got so much going on, and then it's like deadlines. And I don't know about you, Kira.
Yeah, but then you're also freelancer.
Yeah, at Gadio at the moment.
So there you go.
Which is very fun.
It sounds great. Yeah.
Lovely place. But yeah, it's quite full on. But I suppose it's just how you manage that time. I don't know how you manage yours.
Yeah, I think you just find a way, don't you? Like you just like take it on and you work it. And the thing is, you love radio, so actually, it's not like a lot of them don't really feel like work. They feel like it's just like you're having fun and you're enjoying it. And it's always nice when those jobs actually pay, though, because it was a lot of like free work. So, you just find a balance for it, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I struggle sometimes, but it's really I do enjoy it. Yeah.
I feel like we finally got the balance now, because at like the start of this academic year, it was we need to do everything for this show. Constantly, we need to make imaging. We need to sound really good. And I think at this point we've just gone. We're so consumed by everything else. Does it really matter if we have a bad show? Like that's
as long as you're enjoying yourself, I suppose. And
yeah. I think as well, like, it's hard because I remember Scott Mills said, you're only as good as your last show, which is a really good point, but is not helpful. No offense, Scott. Not helpful when you're, like, one of those people who's such a spiraler and you're, like, holding on to every little thing and you're like, oh. But I guess he says it because, like, when we took over from him and we got his show, and I was like, well, what advice have you got? And he was like, prepare. And I guess that was, if you're really prepared, it can't be, like, could be if something really crazy goes wrong. But it can't really be a bad show, can it? Like, maybe a few little things might go a little awry that you weren't expecting, but you're prepared for it. But basically, what I was going to say was maybe not the opposite of Scott, because I would never go against such a legend. But that, like, also, yeah, maybe you are only as good as your last show, but that last show is finished, it's gone, and you have to move on into the next moment. You're also, like, in the middle of a show. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure everyone is guilty of it. You make a mistake. Something's not gone how you wanted it. You have to let it go, like, immediately. You can't hold on to it, or you're just going to be chasing your tail and making more mistakes. So I feel like, actually, we have to be more zen. We have to let go of things. We be like, you know what? if we're all a bit more chill about it, we're actually going to have a more fun show. We're actually going to have a better show that goes smoothly, and we'll all be happier for it.
Well, let's talk about Scott Mills, because in 2022, you and Dean McCulloch took over from his afternoon show, the first weekday afternoon show to move out from London and into Salford. Both on a professional level and a personal level, what did it mean to launch such a prestigious slot from Salford?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was incredible. It was amazing. It was something I had never predicted for myself, because, I mean, how can you imagine that you're going to be the person or one of the people that takes over from Scott Mills? Like, that's not something that anyone has on their vision board, because you just think that's crazy. Like, I loved Scott, looked up to him, loved him and Chris on the radio, loved listening to what they did, because I was like, this is amazing radio, and this is the kind of radio that I think people dream of being able to make. So to get that show, I was just like gobsmacked, but so excited, because I was like, right, okay, like there's only 2 presenters here that are getting given this opportunity. Like, this is incredible. So taking over the show was so good, but it was also like bittersweet, because I wanted to work with Scott. You know, you want to be there in the same building as him, like learning from him, and like to be able to work at on the station. It was like, I have to be in that slot, which means you're not there. But it was a lot, you know, like it was an education. Like, I learned a lot in a fast space of time, because daytime Radio 1 is an intense spot to be in. You've got to be able to do that multitasking on like a very high level. Like, and also I at that time had been working so heavily on being a solo presenter. So I then also had to like take on board, like, right, how do you co-present in this environment? And so you're learning so much about the other person, because we knew each other and we were friends, but we didn't, you know each other as closely as you need to know each other's cues. And you only get that through doing more on air. So it was a roller coaster, should we say, like Ronan Keating says. Radio is a roller coaster.
One of your favourite songs, that, Kira.
It is, to be fair. So how, I suppose you did the afternoon show and then you got the group chat with Nat.
Yeah.
How is presenting with Dean different to presenting with Nat, would you say?
Oh, do you know what? It's hard because any presenter that you work with is different, because everyone's got their own personalities or their own ways of being on air, and so everyone is different. I think the difference between Dean and Nat specifically, I think perhaps it's just the shows that we're doing are different. You know, like with group chat, it's more about like being like your audio group chat. So we're trying to be like your friends, and you can join in, and we just having a little bit of light-hearted fun. And afternoons definitely was, we were taking over from Scott and Chris, so we were like, right, this is like the biggest like show, and we need these speeches, and we need this, and da. And it was, I'd say, with afternoons, it was more, we were trying to fit a lot more in, and with group chat, we're going, here's these really fun things that we want to do, but we're going to let them breathe a little bit more. And there's, good sides to both of those. But you know what? They're both brilliant presenters, and, there was brilliant times working with both of them in different ways. It's actually a hard thing to put into words of what's the difference, really, because they're both really fun, and, we'll have a laugh. So, different, but in a good way, I guess. But I can't put it into words for you.
Yeah. Well, you're currently, like we say, on Radio 1's group chat with Nat O'Leary. I like to imagine it as like a radio show for the girlies. Like
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But also anyone
yeah.
who's in the group chat.
How do you try and portray that like authenticity and get that like group chat vibe, would you say?
I think obviously we are friends, so I think that like naturally the way we speak on air is just relaxed and casual, and we get on, so hopefully that invites you in to want to be part of it. But that's what we're going for anyway, so we're hopeful that that's what it sounds like. And I think really we're having a look online and seeing the things that are coming up on our algorithms and the things that we find interesting, and we're going, well, that's what we need to bring to the listeners, because that's what they're talking about or what they want to be talking about, and they've just not seen it on their feed yet or whatever. And I think genuinely, like, that's how we create that vibe, is that we're genuinely just chatting to you like as if we are like bringing you a bit of tea for the group chat. Like that is what we want it to be. And it's, sometimes that tea is something that has happened to one of us and we're like, come on, this has happened to you too. Like, tell us a story. Or, like it's an online trend that's like, what did we do recently? It was cause free will. So Nat bought this and it was, what's the last, crazy thing that you did just cause free will. And I think we all had, it's like basically like, I guess your pub chat, group chat kind of fun vibes, and we just have fun with it. And I think that's, the thing we hope for is if we're having fun, you're having fun listening.
And I think it's that authenticity, like it just comes across as like really authentic and just very relatable, which is really important in radio. I don't know how you manage to get that relatability aspect. Like you said, I suppose it's with the finding stuff from social media.
Yeah, but I also think it's like opening yourself up as a person. I think like sometimes I'm the butt of the joke, sometimes Nat's the butt of the joke. But I personally see that if you're going to be a radio presenter, you are offering yourself up to be the butt of the joke. That is the point. Like some presenters like are maybe a bit more like, I don't really want that joke made about me, which is absolutely valid and fine. But I personally am like, I'm free game. Like that was I'm ready to be, because I was the butt of the joke in my family with like, I'm like the youngest cousin and like the youngest sibling, and like I've grown up with being the joke anyway. So like I think I'm offering myself up to that audience. But I think there is something about just offering up that sort of perspective and like, oh, this thing happened to me and I'm a bit embarrassed about it, but I'm going to share it with you. And like I think then people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that happened to me. And like, that's how you then get the relatability, because people want to see like who you are and who you really are, not like some like shiny polished version of yourself. And I think what's nice about the fact that like there's a lot of like co-hosts and duos and trios on Radio One is that each person is bringing a different perspective, because me and Nat get on and we have a lot of things in common, but we also have different lives and we're doing different things and we're have different ideas on things. So you're sort of like covering your bases. Then different people are like, oh, I relate to Nat, or I relate to Vicky, or whatever. Which is nice. I think it's like a little, chocolate box with a mix of different things in.
That's a nice analogy.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're an all-female duo.
Yeah.
That's really inspiring for like a woman to see. Yeah. It's such a good show, and it feels nice to listen to in a way. Like two women killing it on the radio. You're brilliant.
No, honestly, that meant a lot to me as well, because I think when I was growing up, I feel like there was a lot of like male-female duos, and sometimes they were like equal parts, like, important to the show, and sometimes, the woman might be there to laugh at the man's jokes or whatever. And that was old school, like that was just the way it was, and it wasn't the way it was for everyone. But I think it's really nice, and it meant so much to me that they were giving two women an entertainment show, because obviously we've got lots of women out there absolutely crushing it on shows. Like you've got Women's Hour, and we've had Life Hacks for years with double-header, like two females talking about like important things and like, things that I think really do need to be discussed that everyone is dealing with, your like struggles or your worries or anything that you might need help with, which is so important and is so great. But like, I think we've got less entertainment shows within like radio. Sometimes we've got tons and tons of podcasts, but like there are women doing entertainment solely just like women, and I think that is really good that we're now in a place in the world where we're getting more of that, because we can hold our own. Like, women are funny. I'll say Nat's funny. I'm not going to say I'm funny, because I'm never going to treat my own on in that way, because I would just embarrassing. Anyway, but and we can have fun and we can entertain you, and like we still have all the truckers listening and messaging in and loving the show. It's not like we're only speaking to the girls. So I think that feels really good to me that was, something that can happen, and I'm really glad to hear you say it's inspiring, because hopefully we'll just get more of it,
One thing you can always rely on with the radio is the truckers. They will always listen.
Yeah. The truckers will always listen, and they'll always join in, and they get it. They know what they're voice noting in. They know how to like send in a good message. They know what you want to hear from them. They've got it down.
Yeah, they're on the ball. They're on the ball. Same with the farmers as well. But it's the truckers. Yeah. Anyone that just like drives for a living, I think.
Yeah, and fair enough. Like that's when I listen to the radio most, is when I'm in my car. And it's nice company, isn't it? It's like you could put on like a streaming service. You could do that. But I just think it's nice to have like a person there, like giving you a bit of like info or a little like something you've not heard about, and then a little funny, and like I just think it's nice. You feel like you're getting something out of it more than just listening to the same songs over and over.
Yeah. Well, a lovely career so far, and I'm sure you've got much more planned yet to come. But if you could go back to the very beginning of it all and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
Ooh. I think my advice would have been to just stop being such a scaredy cat and to just like go and speak to people, because at the end of the day they are just people, and that you don't have to worry about being like, they're the boss of a place and like, how do I say this and what should I say. Like, actually being yourself and chatting is kind of the interview really for radio, isn't it? Like, if you can go in there and just be a bit more relaxed and a bit like more of your personality come out, then that's kind of the point. So maybe to just like put myself into more spaces and be more confident with it. However, that said, I've got where I am through how I like lived that life. So I wouldn't actually change anything, but I would just say like to be a little less afraid and just knock on more doors and speak to more people. And also I would have told myself to practice more intense features on air when I had a chance, where it wasn't like, you're on national radio right now, don't mess it up. I would have done more intense, like I said, few beds, few sound effects. You're changing here, you're doing this, you've got a caller here, you've got to put whatever, to make it more complicated so that you're practicing those skills of doing it all at once. Like if you see Greg James doing these buttons, he is like a master.
I've seen this TikTok live.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely in awe of how anyone does it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just practice. The more you do it, the more muscle memory you get. And also, like, I feel like the desk knows if you are scared or if you're worried. Like, and I feel like it senses, and then you end up pressing the wrong button, and you press a fader start so your clip doesn't go out, and then you can't panic. You just cannot panic. It's all about, like, everyone's going to make mistakes. We all do. We all fluff words, or we all say the slightly wrong thing, or we press the wrong button. But it's actually the recovery that's important. It's not the not making the mistake. So I think it's just about being kind of cool about it and just being like, oh, didn't mean to press that, right, let's carry on, and not letting that ruin everything. Because also you have to remember the listener doesn't actually know how it's meant to sound. Like, obviously some mistakes they'll get, but they're not bothered that you pressed that wrong button, so long as you just recover it into the next thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a lovely note to end on. It's very nice to have you back in Shock Radio, and that, I know we said it must be weird, yeah.
It's just nice, actually. It's nice to be here. Like, I don't know, like, it doesn't really feel like, it's weird. It's like looking into like something that's not really your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like through a glass lens or something.
Yeah, especially because this is the building where like the SU is, so that this is where we came really. Like, other than Shock, this was just where we came to party, you know. So I just remember a lot of like sitting in that hallway waiting for taxis, like in fancy dress from rec nights and stuff. And like, I haven't been back to this building for like nearly a decade, so that is the sound effects guy. But yeah, at the beginning we were saying, like you were saying, you know, you guys are 20 and stuff, and like you're not too young. And that's how we felt at that time. But I only so heavily was like, you are young, because like you guys should just 20 years. You've got your whole life ahead. Like, I mean, I'm acting like I'm 50. I'm not. But like, there's so much ahead for you. So exciting. So
yeah, and it's always nice to hear someone from our station doing so well in the industry. So lovely to have you back. Lovely to have you on the podcast, Vicky Hawkesworth. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a joy.